So I've made just a couple final tweaks to everything, and if I hide my guidelines and look at it, I think, yeah, that looks pretty well balanced out. It's got one kind of big group up here and another group that doesn't quite have as much visual weight because there's a lot more solid color up here. And we see this first and then we see this second, which is just the way I want it to be. So now we need to make the information for the tabs. Doing the tabs is kind of like taking the essentials from this main part and putting down here. So the first essential would be the name. So I'll make a copy of that. And let's put it together on this one first. I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, I need to keep in mind that this is my trim line, so everything beyond this is going to disappear. And if you ever want to get a better idea of exactly what your area is, you can create kind of a temporary mask by making a selection around and just make a new layer, pop it all the way up to the top of your layers box, and then invert the selection by going to select, inverse, and just fill it up with black or white. So this gives me a better idea of what's there, and I can turn this off and on as I need to. So there's a mask up there if I need it. I have free admission here, but just looking at this, I think if I use that font, it'll disappear. So I'm going to use my more bold font. And kind of block this stuff in. And again, I am lining things up, so I do want to kind of stick with what I established, that text lines up from side to side and is kind of centered there in the space. Alrighty. And I like the idea of bringing in some more of this orange, so we'll make that orange and see how it looks. And then the last bit of information is this. And you know what I just realized? Is that I didn't put the time on here. You know what? That's probably a good thing to put on here. So let's say 7 p.m. And for kicks and giggles, it's at the USU Spectrum. Because that's one of the few places I know of around here that you can perform. Now that I've done that, I think I might even just make this come all the way down so it fits that whole section. Maybe? Maybe not. You'll do that too. Try things out. If it doesn't work, change it back. That's what Photoshop is great for. Okay, there we go. That's much better. Free admission, 7 p.m. USU Spectrum. Alright, so we need to put this information down here as well. So this is really going to get crowded if I keep using that big font, so I'm going to use my smaller font and just type in kind of an abbreviated version of the dates. November 26th, 7 p.m. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm turning things on its side, it becomes a little harder to understand how that looks together. So there's a really neat little thing they have in Photoshop now, and it's in, I want to say version 5, but not in version 4, and it's the rotate tool. So you can grab that by hitting either R or just selecting it. It's underneath the shape tool, and you can click and drag out here on your canvas and it will actually rotate your whole canvas. And if you hold down Shift, it will pop to those main compass points. And anytime you want to go back to regular, you can look up here in your control bar and hit Reset View. But for now, putting this stuff together, it's kind of helpful to see what it looks like. Alrighty. So 26th, 7 p.m. I'm just going to tweak these with the knowledge I have about some type things. There we go. So I'm using kerning and resizing, and and then I want to put where it's at. So USU Spectrum. This last little bit should also be lined up as much as we can. So I may need to resize a couple things, but I'd like this to make just kind of one tidy block of type. Here we go. The only thing that's a little weird is if you use your arrow keys to nudge around, they still orient to the way the document really is. So you haven't actually rotated the official document on its side, you're just rotating the view. So I'm going to put it back the way it was. Turn off my little mask so I can see what's going on, and that looks pretty good. I think I'll go with that. So now we need to duplicate this for each one of these, and having a duplicate that I can go back and edit just one would be really useful. So I'm grabbing all of my layers and turning them into a smart object by right-clicking on it and going Convert to Smart Object. And now I can grab that object and duplicate it to however many copies I need, and then if I decide I have to go back and change the color of a font or have to change the information before it gets printed, I can do that. My voice is starting to go. Now once we get here to the edge, you need to keep in mind that this is the trim edge, so make your spacing, treat this dotted line like a trim line. So there's this amount of spacing here, there should be about the same amount of spacing there. And you can come in here and be just as nitpicky as you feel like being over your spacing to get those correct. And that's why I created this in one of these inside blocks first, because then I wouldn't have that extra space kind of fooling me into thinking I had more space to work than I needed to. So now if I zoom back, turn my guides off, I can see my project, and you want to take kind of a final last look over it and make sure there's not any layers that you've left on that you need to turn off, and kind of take a last look. So I'm looking at this and seeing a really big scratch on my background, which I'm going to fix. So I need to unlock that layer and grab my patch tool, make a quick fix. I love the patch tool. I was really excited when that got introduced to Photoshop. Okay, that is ready to go. And so at this point you would make sure you talk to whoever your printer is and save it as the correct file format. And actually you should have probably talked to your printer earlier, but save it as the correct file format and you'll be good to go. Make sure you always save a copy of your PSD with its layers, because I promise you the one time that you don't is going to be when you really wish you had. Anyway, this is a fun project. Play around with spacing. Look at all the examples on the website, or even go out and Google for some more if you need some inspiration, and use those to use an example to build off of. Makes it a lot easier, especially if you're first time around on this. So I hope you learned something, and good luck.